So how do we teach children to read? What is the process? And what I have here is what we call steps to success. And I'm going to scroll down, or rather up, so you can see these steps. And here you'll see our first step, phonics and phonemic awareness. And really, I could really include here phonological awareness. Step 2 is fluency. Step 3, grammar and vocabulary. Step 4, sentence comprehension. Step 5, reading comprehension. And then obviously success. So this is what we call the scholar skill steps to reading success. We're going to see that decoding, basic decoding, times language comprehension equals reading comprehension. Now, let's go back to the base of our system. And the base of our system begins with kind of a high-flying term, right? Phonological awareness. Don't get scared when you see terms like this. Don't say, oh no, what does that mean? Well, what is phonological awareness? Well, let's take a look at it. P-H-O-N-O, phono, means sound. And L-O-G means study. So what we're looking at is a study of sounds. And phonological awareness simply means that children have begun noticing that speech consists of sounds. So this is where kids begin to say, hey, wait a minute. When I heard that, I'm actually hearing sounds. When they read a sentence, I'm actually hearing individual words, and they have sounds. And then later on, I'm learning that even at a smallest level, when I hear a word, they are what we call small sounds or phonemes. So phonological awareness is simply the fact that children can hear the sounds of the language and recognize them as distinct sounds. In other words, they're saying, hey, I understand that speech consists of sounds. Phonological awareness is an auditory process. You can close your eyes and do or develop phonological awareness. You're really training the children's auditory skill. You're training their ears to hear the individual sounds in sentences, the individual syllables, for example, okay? And they're learning the structures of language that way. All right, now that's phonological awareness. What is phonemic awareness? Phonemic awareness is the process by which children learn how to distinguish the distinct sounds that we use to create all of the spoken words in our language. So if phonological awareness is this huge circle of just sounds, kids are beginning to develop an awareness of the sound structure of the language, phonemic awareness means that's the process by which children are learning how to distinguish the distinct sounds that we use to create the spoken words in our language. These little sounds, these indivisible, distinct sounds, are called phonemes. Again, you see the P-H-O-N, phon, sounds. All right? So we're looking at the small sounds of the language. So if I say cat, well, that's k-at. At. And there are 3 sounds in that word, and there's a correspondence between each sound and the letter, but we haven't even gotten there just yet, okay? In phonemic awareness, kids are learning to recognize what we have as 44 spoken sounds, or phonemes, by listening to poems, rhymes, stories, and conversations. Here's what's important to learn. There are 44 individual, or what we call distinct speech sounds that we use to make or to say all the words in our language. Isn't that amazing? Just 44. And each language, by the way, has a finite amount of these phonemes or these speech sounds that are used to create all words. So if I have the word cat, for example, and then I said cats, now I've added that s at the end, I've added another phoneme. And so I've added another sound, really another sound. All right? So phonemic awareness is the process by which the children are learning how to pick up, how to hear, how to listen in to each of these distinct sounds that we use to create all the words in our spoken language. And how do we do that? We have a lot of fun with it, okay? So they learn by listening to stimulating poems, rhymes, stories, and conversations. The more you speak to your children, the more you read to them, the more you have conversations with them, the more aware they become of the sounds that are responsible for all the words we create. Now, they may not know what a phoneme is, they might not know that they're becoming phonemically aware, but as we immerse them in language and as they respond to us, we want to begin to stress to them that phonemes are what we use to create all the words we say. Now, that's really important, right? So how do we do that? Again, reading, rhyming, and then also we can have them begin to segment words. Like we say cat, then we say, hey, listen to this. Ka-at. Did you hear those? Ka-at. Did you hear those sounds? So we can segment or break a word into its sounds. We can say also with cat, at, and say, hey, what if I took away that first sound? Now what do I have? I have at, right? So we can begin to separate sounds, or really what we call isolate them. We can blend sounds together. We can manipulate sounds in many ways so that kids begin to understand that each sound can be isolated, manipulated, changed, and that those changes affect words. Okay? So that's what we call phonemic awareness. In other words, we're teaching them the sequence of sounds and later on the sequence of words and the sequence of sentences. So the sequence of sounds, phonologically, that huge, big circle of all the sounds they hear, and those distinct sounds that we use to create sentences and syllables. Words are made up of syllables. When we come to phonemic awareness, that's a subset. And we're saying, okay, now let's focus on these really small sounds, these 44 sounds that make up the words we use, that we use to create the words that we say. And we want to get them totally immersed into isolating sounds and going, hey, what's that first sound you hear? What's that last sound you hear in this word? Let's blend some sounds together to create a word. Let's have a whole word and separate the sounds. And so, or what we call segmenting them. So they're playing with sounds, moving sounds around. And again, this is a very auditory process. Okay? All right, now, what's phonics? So we have phonological awareness, the big circle of sounds. We have phonemic awareness, that smaller circle, where they're paying attention to the speech sounds that create all the words. And now we have phonics. Well, phonics, what is phonics? Phonics is the method of teaching reading by showing how to associate sounds with symbols known as alphabetic letters. Students learn how to sound, say, and spell each word rapidly, accurately, and precisely by identifying its sequence of sounds and the letter symbols that represent those sounds. Students decode spoken sounds by translating them into written letters and words, and they decode written words by translating them into sequences of sounds. So that's phonics. It's the method of teaching reading by showing students how to associate sounds with symbols known as alphabetic letters. Sound-symbol relationship. Students will learn how to sound, say, and spell each word by identifying the sequence of sounds in those words and then the letter symbols that represent those sounds. You see, in a sound-structured language, we use alphabetic letters to represent each sound. Now, in English, it's a little difficult, right? Because we only have 26 letters, but we have 44 sounds. And so we will use a combination of letters sometimes to represent a sound, like sh. We will use sh to represent that sound. So we have to combine letters in English to represent all of the 44 phonemes. And we will look at that later on. But phonics begins by teaching children, here's a sound, here's a symbol. Here's how to spell that sound. Here's how to write that sound. So those are defining our terms at the very beginning, even before we start to climb the ladder and take a look at each particular aspect. All right, well done. Class is over for today. Have fun. Look over your definitions.